What's up, everybody? This is episode number 1 of Everything Amateur. That's right. There's another podcast out there. I thought they'd run out of room by now, but no, there's another podcast hitting your ears, hitting your eyes. And this one's going to be a little bit different, though, because it happens to land in amateur racing. And yes, there are other amateur racing podcasts out there. They're very good, but there is room for us in this space. And of course, us is myself, Daniel Blair from Supercross University, and Greg Albertson from Moto. And Greg, we've been talking about this for a long time, and you finally got your act together. Because I've been ready. I'm a podcaster, bro. So I've been ready, but here you are, ready to go.
Yeah.
What's up, brother?
Well, I need a big Daniel Blair platform like you have. So no, it's we talked about this. You coming out of Supercross and before you made the change over here, this kind of like I'd like to think of our place game as your kind of your introduction back into seeing what some of these kids are capable of. And you transition into that KTM role, and me doing what I do now, it seems really fitting, and there seems like there was a void in it. And like we talked about, I remember the days of going on like Vital MX and looking for your name on there. Just give us a platform to talk about some of these riders that we're constantly seeing because we're at all these venues and at all these races.
I think back to my first time at Game. I know you guys have changed a lot. I mean, dramatically. I was there for a summer. It was so hot. I think I was going to the YMCA like every chance I could get to cool off. And I don't think the temperatures changed much there. You guys still cook every summer. But one of my craziest memories there was Wyatt Thurman. He was on a YZ85. And little Talon Rogers was like a little, maybe 6-year-old. Was it his 6-year?
AMA 6, he probably had his 6th birthday party or his 7th birthday party at the Shawnee pool out there. So I remember going out there. So yeah, it's cool seeing all these kids. And now we're in that, Wyatt, like I said, like you said, he's riding SMX next now. It's crazy. I've known him since he was 9 years old. And it's crazy watching these kids grow up. And I bet not long ago, people thought the same about, you and me when we were going to these races.
And now we're old and crusty and doing a podcast.
Yeah, it's all right.
Hey, it's going to be good, though, man. I love covering the pro side of things. Obviously, that to me, I'm a fan of pro racing. So when it comes to pros, I like to get wild and have a good time. But when it comes to amateurs, that's where my heart is, where my passion is. And I do think that there's a lot of great kids out there that we could cover and get to know them and kind of prepare the next generation of fan for what they're going to see in the future. And not only that, but just and kind of elevate amateur racing. I think about what the Moto Playground dudes are doing, what Verb Moto's doing, getting back into it. I feel like every promoter right now is throwing everything they have at this, and so are the families. So why don't we get in there and start giving some recognition to these promoters and these racetracks and these kids and these families and make amateur racing that much cooler? And again, we're doing it on our own. You're doing it with Moto. I'm doing it with Supercross U. But now you and I can do it together and give these families something to listen to on the road. Probably driving to a Loretta qualifier this weekend somewhere, getting ready for what's next. And yeah, man, I'm excited to do this with you. I think we're gonna be a good pair. And this is gonna be a good first episode, I believe.
Yeah, like you said, these kids deserve the recognition because, man, I deal with it all the time, and we talk about the privateers. We just had Marshall Welton out here doing a little bit national number 35, and way more people are buying gear and goggles and dirt bikes because they know who Caden Dudney and Landon Gibson are, and that's the reality. So it is definitely a market where these guys are selling bikes and products and stuff like that, and to shine it's such a big disconnect when we went from amateurs to pros. And you never look behind, Remember when I was doing this, they were like, "Oh, you don't know who Drew Adams is on the 65?" I'm like, "No," because we just came out of, "Well, you don't know this kid." Like once you go past that, and you'll see this in amateur racing, it's like the 50 parents will tell you, "You don't know who this kid is or that kid is," and they're 2 years removed in the 85 10 to 12 class, and they don't know who the top 7 or 8-year-old is anymore because we don't really look behind us much, but it's as the industry is, it's like there's still, I mean, we were just both at Springading. I mean, we saw all the motorhomes and trailers, and it's an industry of its own for sure.
It is, and it's funny because I mean, the 50 world. You're like the 50 guru. Like, I mean, you've helped me. I mean,
Baker's
you helped
factory of 50s riders.
You are. I mean, you helped me. You helped me identify Beckham Smith. You helped me, obviously, Bryson Smith, Talon Rogers. I got that info from you, and now I'm sitting here looking and watching kids like a kid named Boone Lloyd. I don't know nothing about this kid other than he's got a rad mullet, and he was stuffing kids at Springading, and I'm like, man, I know 50 racing now. And a couple of years ago, dude, I didn't know who was in the B class, and now I know who Boone Lloyd is, and these little Edwin Meyer kids, and it's just crazy how that changes for us. But no, it's time to recognize these kids and and give you all something to listen to. But I do want to start with the Spring Nationals. That's what we're covering here in episode 1. And I want to start with this, Greg. These families, man, I applaud the ones that nail all 3. I mean, the Daytona to Freestone drive is crazy. Freestone to Spring-a-Ding, 2 weeks back-to-back in Texas. I do think, though, my experience here is that you don't need to hit all 3. There's maybe a year when you want to, right? If it's your year, if you're prepared and it's like this is a big year for you. But I think you could hit 1, you could hit 2, you could hit 3. And I think for me, it's really just comes down to what year you're in, where you're at in your career and timeline, what you're trying to experience. And I don't think there's a must do it this way model when it comes to Spring Nationals.
No, no, not at all. And like where we're going to start off with at Daytona is a perfect example of that. People ask my opinion on Daytona, and if you're a motocross family, what better place to be than Bike Week? To go watch Supercross, to enjoy Bike Week, and then get to race the track that you just saw them race on. But here's the big but here. If it's for me, it's not a real fair shake on the who's who. As just because the shortened tracks, how they cut it down, it's more just like an experience race. If you can fit that into your schedule, go ahead. You're not going to have a better week as a motocross family. If you're looking at budget and bang for your buck, obviously the races in Texas for me are close together fairly if they're 2 consecutive weeks. But at the end of the day, it still is the major is the Daytona RCSX, and that's probably my least takeaway out of all those. I don't really know what's really going on. I think the other 2 races were a lot more to kind of see, the who's who. Not that they weren't there, but I think it was a little bit depleted, just because it's on the other end of the country, and then you do have to do 3 weeks, and then the next 2 races are stacked back to back, and they're possibly over spring break, where nobody's spring break is over RCSX.
Yeah, I've noticed that the East Coast families are all about it. It's a huge novelty race. It's Daytona because you do get kind of the back-to-back. You get the big race on Saturday night, and which is now also SMX Next Futures. That's what it's formerly called. So you get that too, and then a lot of those kids stay and ride the next day. And so I know for me now being an East Coaster, it's a massive race on the schedule. It's one of the ones that everyone identifies and wants to go to. And I agree. It's different than the other 2 because it is at Daytona and the way they have to keep things safe. It has to be watered down in a way that is, I'd say, cool enough for the A and B kids to have a little bit of fun on it and definitely get into each other. I mean, there's some aggressive racing there, but definitely to me, it's more 65, 85, and maybe some of the 125 classes. But the numbers are good every year. This year, they lucked out with weather. I mean, I was there last year. It was unbelievably difficult. They pulled it off. Somehow. I remember being in the room with them, and I can't believe how they just timed it out perfectly to get that thing done. But no,
Well,
then you go to the Freestone.
You were there this year, correct? At Daytona. That's what I heard. And I heard the true story was that you were down there Thursday night at Razzles, and Maggie called you and you said you got to get your ass home right now. Stayed up all night. You didn't do real. That's what I heard happened down there. So you had to miss the race because
Man,
Maggie wasn't happy about your Thursday night, ladies' night at Razzles. Anybody that's been down there knows what that's like. So man, I'm glad you guys are working past that.
yeah. So, I thought we were going to keep private stuff private, but yes, that's the actual real story. Everything else was a complete lie. I was actually at Razzles on Thursday night. And for all you kids listening with mom and dad right now, don't you worry about Razzles. You stay out of Razzles. There's a couple parents right now that are going, oh.
That's right. But yeah, so for me, the Daytona race, like you said, it's that race that man, my biggest qualm, I guess, with it this year is again, it's a race that I personally want to be at just because of the weekend. But my problem with it is I guess I don't understand how Chase Sexton was running a minute 18 lap times, and then the 85 classes were running 50-second lap times.
They're faster. Chase is off. Chase was way off.
So, but I understand it's to get the guys through so everybody can get. So, like I said, for me, what I want to see moving forward is when they do spend a week, some real metrics on you put it. These kids are putting in the work. They're spending the money and they're going there to appease the factories, to be seen, and when the races are 7 minutes long, and they're pushing you through as fast as they can. That's kind of where I don't push the race, but I do tell people to go and have it. It is a great weekend, and you'll have a lot of fun, and it does mean a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's get into Daytona and we'll rip through some of the highlights and the standouts. First question for you, though, that I have is the format. These amateur kids are used to 2 moto formats or 3 moto formats at Loretta's and regionals. Daytona does the main event format, and I don't know. I want to hear your take on it. Mine is that I like that. I like that it feels like a Supercross because it's the Daytona Supercross. So I kind of like it. Landon Gordon, we'll get to him. He kind of took advantage of that, had a rough heat, but ended up winning a championship because he won the main. Like, I mean, pretty much clockwork. That kid is really on it right now. But your thoughts just on the format, running the heat main format at Daytona. You cool with that?
Yeah, 100%. If there's Supercross in the name, that's how it needs to be. In my opinion, I understand at the other national race we went to there with the Arena Cross this year, they did that three moto format. I understand that because when you are giving away a championship, they're holding the championship plate for one race. So I understand. It's hard. We make fun of that a little bit. Like you win one race and now you have a championship, but uh, yeah, I think a Supercross main event is definitely the way to go.
So Landon Gordon was a big winner. He won both his championships there. Very impressive. I don't think we need to get into much of a breakdown on him because we saw him at Glendale. We saw him at Daytona. I mean, he won the night before too. So it's, I mean, actually, he won three. He won three titles for being honest, and he's pretty phenomenal right now.
The road to SMX next. Like, man, I think they got to do better with the naming. If the top five from the night before and it's the road to SMX next, I don't know how they do that. You'd probably be better filled in on me. I know a manufacturer's got a lot, but when it's the road to SMX next and the people that are already winning that, it sounds like their road's already there. So I don't know if that's the place for it or maybe it's just a bad name.
Yeah, I didn't even recognize that was the name. I didn't even notice that. I just noticed that he won. I ripped through the results and was like, "Yep, he won. Yep, he won." And obviously, he's been great this year. Just, I mean, really coming into his own. But let's move on through the roster or through the race order. Christopher Harris. So this is a kid, I've known him since he was on 50s. He's my son's age, and I've always thought he was a talented rider. His career path has been a little bit different as far as where he's gone and his success or just even being there. But to me, it looks like he's put in a major effort in this year on being competitive on that 250, and he ended up winning 2 championships there. So I'm not surprised, too, because he is kind of a Supercross kid. I feel like he's a little bit better on that than motocross, even though motocross he's good, too. But Christopher Harris, too, just being in the center of the country. Your thoughts on him winning 2 big bike titles this year in his AMA 14 year? It's pretty cool.
Very, very, very cool. Definitely don't know the family that well. I know they're down in Texas. Spent a lot of time at Oak Hill with Denny. So he's been on the Supercross tracks down there a lot. And, there's 2 types of people, I feel like. There's people that are chasing the Spring Nationals and the Winter Series stuff. And there's people that are trying to focus on Supercross. We try to do both. I used to be really heavily Supercross all winter. I've changed my take a little bit, not my take, but we just cut out about February 1st. We transitioned back to motocross almost full time, just to get ready for Spring Nationals. I in the past we went all the way up to Spring Nationals with very little motocross prep and got our ass kicked a few times. So it's just not fun when we go spend those 2 weeks. So you kind of see who's spending what kind of time and Harris's results, we'll talk about them more into the spring of ding. They're definitely favored, definitely towards better results in the Supercross, and it shows that he put in the work in Supercross.
Next on the list is Tommy Doble, who I've never heard of this kid, and he won a championship, and he's also in some of the other results. So it's not like this was the only good race. He's had some other good motos, but he did win a title. Do you know him? This is new to me, I pretty much feel like I know most of these kids, especially at that level. But who is that?
Judging by the accent, I think I know he's an MTF kid. I think he's Australian. I could be wrong there. I didn't do my research. You sent this. Who is Tommy Doble? And we're just kind of asking each other.
That's why I put it on here. I don't. Do you know him? I don't know him.
He came, yeah, but he came out. He won that race. But that's again, we're talking about shorter motos, set up like the Daytona RCSX, where anybody can go grab on a win like that. That's awesome on Tommy Doble. Great. That's a great ride. You show up at race like a big race, a major like that, you get a championship. But there is one of those things you have to go back it up, and it does look like he was at the other races and didn't back it up with any more big wins. So you can kind of, you could chalk that up as a weirdo win. He's going to have a couple more chances, at Loretta's to see if that was a weirdo win or if that was for real. Was that a product of it being a shortened, dumbed down amateur track, Supercross track, which it was very start dependent, or was it somebody that is on the rise, put himself in a good position, is going to be up there again in August?
When I see a result like that, what it does for me though is it puts my eyes on it. That I'm watching and I want to know. It's almost like some of these kids they kind of stay off radar, and they're off radar, and then they do something to get on radar, and now the eyes are on. So to me, it elevates the pressure. I want to see what he does at Loretta's and what he does moving forward, because now I want to know. So that's my takeaway on him is I don't know who he is, but he did win something with some big names behind him, which tells me I need to pay more attention, and I'm going to now. So good on him, though, to get a championship, like you said. Well, I don't. We'll find out. We'll do some research. Someone will tell us. We'll get a DM. I don't know. Maybe he ends up with you. Maybe he ends up with me someday. Who knows? But Tommy Doble, dude, he wins the Daytona RCSX. So shout out to him. Hey, so C-Class. Dude, C-Class has turned into a pretty cool thing, man, because you get these kids that are breaking out all over the country, and you're like, damn, where'd that one come from? Where'd that one come from? And I bring up a kid named Cooper Bergeron because I know him very well. He's actually a Nevada kid, but he moved out to Next Level 101, and I was with him for over a year. And, dude, he could have made the C-Class last year at Loretta's. He was on Mini Seniors and Super Mini, was having bike issues and just couldn't keep the bikes together, went out and got a 250 and should have made it, but just had some bad luck. He's sticking around. He's one of those, Greg. You know how it goes, where they could have got in, should have got in, didn't, but now they're going for the throat. And he was really, really good. And just a heads up for all you C kids out there, he's going to be one of the favorites this year. Whatever 2 classes he decides, he is legitimately like B speed, and he won here. So you don't know him, but I do. So let me introduce you to Cooper Bergeron. Greg.
Yeah, that's a funny one that I feel like for me in the past, you've talked about this Cooper Bergeron kid, and we hear in different areas because the C class, it is the C class for a reason. Nobody's really performed. That's why they're still riding the C class. So that's the guy that you're hot on. I really don't know at the time right now. There's a Chavez kid we'll get to later.
Yep.
But for me, the C class is a lot like the 54-6 class.
It
They kind
like,
of really I'll know about late June, mid July who's really going to serious, because those are 2 classes that, obviously the C class, the guys that are in the C class, the one guys, they're strictly in the C class because Loretta Lynn's, and you're heavy off in it because Evan right now, right? So your
my
ears to
son
the
is.
ground, you're watching, you see it every
Oh,
weekend. So
I've
I
never
know.
paid attention to C like I am right now, dude, because I'm in the trenches of C. So,
Yeah, and you asked me, like, how do people know? Like, when I got you talking to me about the 4 to 6 year old class and the 7 to 8 year old 50 class, and guys like Christian from Alpine Star, and these guys are telling, like, it's so hard to keep track of all these classes. And like, how do you know? I'm heavy off in it. Like, that's my business
yep.
right now. So
Yep.
you're probably more versed on this, but I think with those C class, they're all kids too that, we all talk. I have this thing is, you don't. Every kid wants to be a professional motocross rider. If you ride a bike and you're remotely good, you want to be. But those C class kids, they're at that age where, I would say 14 to 16, 17, that you actually see what kind of work it takes, and you get to make the conscious decision, like, okay, I'm ready to try to do this. And when you make that decision and you go all in, it's crazy how fast those guys could get. So, in the month of July, we'll really have a better idea. But until then, Bergeron and the other kid we're going to talk about coming up are the 2 that look really good. A lot of them
And
barely
five
miss.
and 5 or 6 more that are just they're gonna
Oh
pop
yeah.
from all over the place, and you're gonna be like, dang. And then sometimes you go to Loretta's and none of them win. So
Yeah, but
someone
don't
else
give up,
gets it.
guys. Those guys, that C class, people sleep on that C class and laugh at that C class. My brother won that C class in '02, and he rode a factory Honda 450 in '08. So in a 6 year span, he went from C class to a factory
Hey,
Honda 450. So it can happen. I don't care who they say, but you can do it. It's not
bro,
common, but it can be done.
Jeremy McGrath. Jeremy McGrath won 125C, dude. And I believe, did Axel Hodges win?
He was there. I don't know if he won, but yeah, he was
I
there and
think
did
he
well.
did, dude. I
hmm
think he won C class. If not, I apologize to whoever beat him. He's like, no way, I whooped his. Again, there's probably kids listening to this. I got to be a little nicer on this show than I am on Main Event Moto. But anyways, Cooper Bergeron, good kid, and he's a C class killer this year, one of many, I'm sure. Grayson Townsend's next on my list. He wins Schoolboy 2. You know him very well. I'm a big fan. I'm a big believer in Grayson. Actually, I've tried to sign him this past year, and I was a little late to the party because of some inner workings on my end on the KTM side. I was on pause, and when I was finally off pause, he was gone. But this is the only thing he did spring nationals. He did do the other ones because he's futures heavy right now, getting his experience there. But he did win Schoolboy 2 in the mod, which is a mod class, and I expect him. Just the reason I bring him up is because I expect him to be very tough this summer in the 250B mod and Schoolboy 2, because he won limited last year, and it's his time to be good in mod, and he's a great rider. You know him better than I do, though.
Yeah, Townsend family, just true professionals. I don't want to talk too much because of their inner workings, and I know how they work. And but I can say this: they got a super professional approach, and you don't know how many people told me 2 or 3 years ago when that family, 3 years ago when that family, it might have been four, when that family showed up. It would have been, yeah, 2020 or 21 at Ponca, and I saw the kid ride 2 days with me, and he. I said, man, I saw him for 2 days. We weren't super heavy at the time. I said, man, that Grayson, I just met him. He's good. And you know how many dads told me, oh yeah, no, he's not that fast. I saw something. I saw kind of how they were working, and for me, it's not a surprise. I don't think he's ever just gonna uh, blow your doors off with speed. But when I'm thinking about a guy that's gonna make a transition to professional racing,
Yep.
that's one I'd put at the top of my list, no doubt, without question. There's no safe bets in this, but with the family and with Gray's attitude and the support system, I think that's the closest thing to a safe bet.
I think that's the best word ever. Safe bet. I don't even really care what happens from now until pro. Really, I think he's going to be a great pro. It's just that I'm with you, clear as day. Let's get to the minis. And I brought up Boone Lloyd. I don't know anything about Boone Lloyd other than he's got a mullet. Cole Davies had a mullet. They ruined him. They cut it off and ruined Cole's brand. Do you know this Boone Lloyd? I mean, you're the 50 guy. Who's Boone Lloyd? I don't know him, but I like him.
No, I miss out on those East Coasters like Cam Buckman. Didn't see him. That's one that kind of stayed off the
Oh,
radar.
that's mine.
Uh,
Hey,
yeah,
man,
I know,
that's
I
my
know.
guy right
So
there.
I got like West Coast middle. So when like somebody like Boone Lloyd comes up, no, I was like, I'm like shocked when I hear about Boone Lloyd. I'm like, who's Boone Lloyd? Who's Mickey Fluhart? I don't know these names because
Oh, I know Mickey too. I've
there's
coached
definitely
Mickey.
other kids that we work with that we, but then they come out and I go, who is that? And they get signed and then they show up and I go, okay. Like I was talking about Townsend, somebody that knew them close knew something that I didn't know or see at those races, because they definitely elevate. I do know he's an aggressive little guy. I've heard he came up in the I would say the real sports mentality. I think he wrestles.
Oh,
So
I like
much
him
like a little
even
Ashford
more,
Hall, little football player. So
dude.
obviously some more in the tank. Not super. I wouldn't say serious about motocross. I know they're serious, but maybe there's going to be some more in the tank because they're not a family that, from what I take, has gone all in yet. They're still going to school and doing regular sports like and which I think if that's your path, I think that's a good path to take.
It's funny you bring up Absher Hall. I was actually with him today, and
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
he plays football and he races part time. He doesn't ride a lot. Then he wins minios. He's just that kid is so freaky talented, dude. And if and when the program becomes more full time, he's a very talented, very very good little rider. Let's move on to Tate Brush and Cam Buckman. I put them together because they seem to be together a lot. Now, Brush is a pure 9, AMA 9, and he's one of the better kids in that AMA 9 class. And Buckman, I just want to point out, he's an AMA 8, but he is a kid that I signed at KTM. He actually moved over to the Husqvarna team this year. Little background on him is he's a little taller, and his dad and I have had multiple discussions just about what they're going to do. And they don't really want to play back in the age class. They just want to race up whatever bike he fits. They want to race, and they're not afraid to lose and chase faster kids. So he's actually an AMA 8, 50 eligible. But dude, he is really getting fast on that 65, and he's going to give these nines trouble. And even the 9 families that I know and talk to are like, man, little Buckman, man. So again, I know he popped up on your radar when he kind of came out there from the East Coast, but tell me a little bit of your thoughts just on Brush and Buckman because both of them are they're top kids in the 7 and 9 this year.
Okay, so the big story, yeah, him being the 8-year-old AMA 8-year-old, I did figure out he is one with the good birthday. That
Yep,
obviously
yep.
matters a lot in the, I would say all the way until probably you get to the mini senior class. That plays a pretty big role in where you're at. But yeah, so that's his big story, and the big story for Tate is obviously a switch to Yamaha. To come off of a 1-1-1 performance at Loretta's in the 50 class. I think he almost led every lap, or he might have led every lap. That's has a dominating performance like that, and then to leave the manufacturer you're with to go take a chance with Yamaha, who, they haven't historically put that 65 up front. The last time that 65 was really up front, Nightingale did a little bit, Thurman, but
Yep.
not consistently up front. So to make that switch, definitely a learning curve. So it was cool to see him go out and grab one, but then also, he's got to battle the younger guys, and that's always something that's on these kids' minds. Nobody wants to get beat by the young kid in that class. So I know it looked like they're pretty close. We got to talk about Shannon Tarnow though. He definitely won some motos there.
Yep,
He
yep.
had a big crash. He went out, I think, with a lower leg issue. So he was definitely in the mix with those guys. So I said it was those three. We miss out on Shannon the rest of the time, but I think those guys were those three were good. But for the lack of a better word, if you look at Tate's results, they weren't very great until the main events. So, but we started our business, and he is a true definition of a gamer. He shows up in the big moments. He always does.
Yep, love that family too. Like them a
Uh,
lot. Known them
yeah,
for a couple of years now, and great kid, great family, and definitely elite talent in these younger years. I do want to move to 65, 10 to 11. Zabanik, Kenan Zabanik, and Levi Geist. Now, this Levi kid, I obviously seen these names and watched them all because they're the same age as Beckham Smith, who's a kid that Beckham Smith, Gavin Welzine, Abshire Hall. These were all kids that I had on my roster. So I know Zabanik, I know Geist. They battled it out. Geis again. He was good in the other ones that I saw too. So he seemed to be a part of the whole party. But Zabanik only did this one. So what's the background at least that you know on this? And then are you surprised to see these two being as good as they are in that 10 to 11?
no, not at all. Those are the players. Zabanik's been in that age group's been the most highly successful kid at Loretta Lynn's as far as results goes in that age group. So no surprise there that he's at the top of that list. Geis has been one that kind of come on a little bit later. If you saw little Levi, he had two older brothers. He's from Minnesota, the Dungy territory, and I think he's got two older brothers, both really good riders. Being at GPF a lot, he was just younger brother syndrome, little chubby cheek kid,
Yep,
just always
yep.
fast, maybe a little bit, maybe in the candy a little much, and looks like over the last year and a half got a little bit more serious. I think they're down there at WW Ranch doing their wintertime training.
Yes, I saw that.
So to be out in that sand condition, I don't know what kind of preparation they did for Daytona, but obviously worked. He showed up at that race, and as we get into and talk about sprinting later, he was definitely the main contender. And we'll talk a little bit. I want to touch on Tate Brush suffered a shoulder injury in the last moto at the Daytona race, and then Zabanik. I don't know what exactly happened to him, but he was a no-show at the next two races. Makes me think there was injury related, especially going into his home track at Oak Hill.
I was gonna say he's a Texas kid, right? So he
Yeah,
would have
Texas
been
kid,
there. Yep, yep.
training facility. Not have been bounced around, but spent a lot of time training at Oak Hill. So it was rare that he didn't show up. So I would assume that's injury related. I don't know that for
Okay.
sure, but that's what I've heard.
Okay, moving on to the 85 classes. Sawyer Geek is obviously one of the most elite amateur kids on the 85s. He did lose one championship, though, to a kid named Tim Lopes. Now, I know Tim Lopes because I know his dad. I raced his dad over in France. He's brought him over to Minios a few times. I'm not surprised to see him over here. He actually is one of the more I'd say engaging dads when it comes to emailing and updates and resume update. He's very active on keeping me up to speed. He always has been. I'm not surprised to see this. This kid is really, really good, and they are all in. And he got one too, but Sawyer, of course, gets one. Sawyer is like he's another Townsend to me, where it's just like just get him to the pros. He's gonna be a good pro. His dad is like an unbelievable person. He's an Olympian. I'm not worried about Sawyer one bit. I signed him to a long-term deal a couple of years ago just because it's like, again, I sign him into the pro. He's just going to be there. But this Tim Lopes kid, I bring him up because he's international. He showed up and won one. And then I'm also going to name Nico Verhoeven. I know you know the name Nico Verhoeven. That kid's from New Zealand. I'm pretty sure he's going to be over here too for Loretta Lynn's. But those are two international names in that age territory right there. And they're freaky good, man. Both of those kids, Lopes and Verhoeven.
Yeah, so don't know much about Lopes. Obviously, Verhoeven spent some time here. Freak show mud rider. So we'll see how that holds up. But Geek, yeah, Geek. You mentioned Townsend, right? And you got them, the Geek family, out there in the same kind of area, and they're
Hymus.
kind of
I feel like
exactly.
they're all
They're
the
kind of
same.
all under that Hymus is under that wing. So like Gary Bruff over there at the RMX series has like created
Yep.
this thing of bringing these really good prep tracks, and then
Yep.
you see this upbringing. So we try to do that as a training facility, create this hot spot and create an environment. But like I feel like in that area, like it was like the first guy through was Marchbanks out of Utah, and then and Pierce Brown, and they kind of created this vision. Okay, hey, we can come from this part of the country and do it. And then Geek
Yep.
pops up, or not, sorry, not Geek. Hymas pops up, and then with his, relationship and the dealership just kind of goes, okay, I'm going to be dad to all these families and kind of help them grow. And they've all got the same demeanor, and it's really cool to see. And
They are. Yep.
it's that I don't know the Hymas family well, but everything I've not heard one bad word about those guys, and it shows in how how those families act.
All of them. Townsend's the same. Geek's the same. There's a good little chain coming from that area, and they remind me of each other. Let's move on to the bigger mini bike classes. Easton Graves won both his championships. Dane Pappas won both of his. I don't want to talk about him now because we're going to get to him probably multiple times. He seems to be maybe numero uno as a super mini kid this year. And then Tanner Dorman. So Easton Graves, I know very well. I signed him as well. Love the Graves family, and he did exactly what I expected. I expect him to be very good on the mini senior type stuff this year, and then mess around with the super mini kids too. I don't know where he's going to decide where he's going to go by Loretta's, or they're kind of on the fence of where they're going to go, which class they're going to decide on. But he did win 2 in the mini seniors. Not surprised. Dane Pappas got both of his, and then Tanner Dorman. You don't know much about Dorman, do you?
No, I saw it showing up at Loretta's, kind of with the WTF, like who's this guy moments for me last year at Loretta's to see him do really well. I think he had Dreamland on the graphics, and again, he's a northeastern kid. That is probably that's one area that I don't hear a lot about up there
So
until
that's
they
your
come and
soft
slap me
spot.
until they come and slap me in the face, and I'm like, oh, well, that's somebody we didn't know about. So that area kind of keeps me paranoid in a good way. You know what I mean? I'm like, I think I got everybody
Like
figured
which
out,
little
but we better come in
yeah.
hot because I don't know what kind of talent they're cooking up there.
He's won. So this kid, I watched him last year at regionals, and what stood out to me is he was wearing Fox, and I'm like, dang, I don't know, Fox gear to me just stands out. I'm always like, huh. And I found out, he rides for Fox, and then I was like, damn, he's got cool style, and wow, he's pretty fast. And then he had a pretty good Loretta's, and then actually spoke to him a little bit, spoke to his dad, kind of got to know him better, talked to him at Minios, watched him. Anyways, part of their discussion was where to go career-wise, and they wanted to go 125s. They actually asked me, is that a good move? And I said, absolutely. He rides the YZ 125. He won both 125 titles there. Didn't have the same success when we got to Freestone and Spring and Ding, but he was in that group. That class is just wide open, I feel, outside of the top 2, but that's a big chunk of good kids there. But he's just one of those late bloomer names, like a Justin Cooper type where, you don't really know much about him, and don't be surprised if he's going to be good from here on out. Whatever class he's in from here on out, I think he's going to be in the mix. It's going to take a lot to get to that top step because his age class is nasty. It's the nastiest age class in amateur racing, I believe. But yeah, Tanner Dorman, everybody. This kid is really, really good. I put my heavy stamp of approval, and yeah, Greg. So one of them that you said that sneak up on you, he's one, and he'll be around from here on out.
Yeah, so he's to me, he's in the Tommy Doble. I'm gonna try to bring up that name so I don't forget it. Tommy Doble, kind of in the
Tommy
same
Doble.
thing. Hey, do it again. Prove it. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yep.
Great. You're on the radar. You're on everybody's radar now. But obviously, a few of those classes because we talked about. Hats off to you. Do the 3 weeks. That's awesome. I wish everybody could do that. I understand they can't, but definitely all the players didn't show up until Texas.
Let's move on to Texas. That's the end of Daytona. Typically, right here, we would take a commercial break. My producer Joe, is the man. You know him. He's the absolute man. He would put in some rad. He might even do it. Who knows? He maybe puts a little jingle in right here and just gives a breather. That's what he does. He understands the game, so maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But right here would be a commercial break. But this is episode 1. We're gonna roll right into Freestone. My question to you, because you're involved with Freestone, you're tight there. You're a big part of the format, big part of the track. Track changes. I'm just your thoughts on how it worked out once they did make the changes.
Well, yeah, so let's be like, I'll be completely blunt on this. Obviously, we talked about like not wanting to speak negative of anything. It's no secret that the track prep has been hit or miss for me. Been great years at Freestone or great days, but it's been hard to recreate a consistent condition. Almost like missing the mark on the first day or somewhere in the middle of the week. So obviously, it's no secret they lost their major event. Like it's out there. So that was the thing, but we talk about what makes a major event, right? Let me touch on that real quick. Basically, it tells the factories where they should go based on it's hard. They don't really know. Well, they're not, nobody's paying attention to us and the amateurs that much. So it's easier for the AMA to go, hey, this is the big one. This is the one you should bring your truck to. They lost that. But the event is the event. So we, as the riders and the people, we make the event, right? It's not nobody else. So we show up if they put on a good event. So Clayton called me just for some advice. I believe he spoke to you too of what can we do to make it better. Obviously that track is and that facility is awesome. So some minor changes with the track, which I thought made the racing a lot better at first turn area
Yep.
after the finish line, slowed it down in some areas, but I think generally they talked about slowing it down, but it looked like it was faster. But the prep they put on it, they slowed it down, and that was the most Loretta's-esque track I've seen. And then knowing that they were going to take a bit on a hit on the entries, and that Moto Playground puts on such a great event, right? Just makes you feel like you're somewhere special with just all the extra events, and it being over spring break. I just told Clayton, hey, all these kids are at training facilities. All these kids are doing this. Everybody's begging for a second Loretta's. And what they gave with the condition and the ruts and the 20-minute motos, I mean, that's the closest thing 100% you will see to Loretta's that I've ever seen. And I left there clapping, and I think everybody that attended this event, it'll give them some more traction to come back. So for me, obviously, not everybody can do the homeschool route and do it at that level or make all three races. If you want to go to the fun event and you want to go to the event that's got the most people and the most activity and it's growing, but if you can do both, it had a real professional feel with the long motos and the track condition and how they ran. It was kind of almost a no frills thing. For me, it was awesome to see. A little bit lackluster because of the amount of entries. I think they had 900 and some change, but for me, it was super top heavy. Uh, Not a bunch of
Yeah.
filler.
Oh,
It was
the names are all there. It was. We're gonna
and
get into that. We'll cover all these classes, but I know you were big on the format too, wanting those longer motos. Pushed for it, got your way on the classes that you wanted. So bravo to you, and you feel overall now afterward success, like definitely
Yeah, yeah. So
build
it
off
got
it.
brought up. Yeah. So for me, it's been brought up that it's maybe too early to do motos like that. But for me, all these kids are ready for that. The weather's cooler. It wasn't every class was 20-minute motos. Every class there's two. Like what's a super mini one and super mini two? Let's be real. It's an excuse to have two classes for that, right? I think there's too many classes, so it's an excuse so that you can run 4 or 5 lap motos and just turn them. Nobody's wants to sit around. So for me, it's just so it wasn't like every class. Super Mini 2, for example, was the 20-minute moto. The stock classes weren't 20-minute moto, so it wasn't every class. But again, I do think we'll get into that in some later episodes. I do think the class structure is a little bit broken to just get people to pay for more classes. So I think that's a good step kind of away from that to try to condense the classes. We also, I put up an idea with some help and thought from my good friend Adam Martin on an underclassmen award, basically awarding the not the oldest kid. Everybody doesn't want to go racing, like you said. Oh well, if it's not your year, you maybe skip it. Well, when you run races, you can run a bigger race. So we looked at the younger classmen in the things, and we recognized them whether they were third, seventh, eighth. So that gets it rid of people want to win, right? So the more classes they put in there, so people can potentially win. But if you can win an award within a class, I think it made it worth it and special to those kids.
Awesome. Okay, good to know. And yeah, probably builds off it. I know it was a big year for them, and I know you're a big part of that one. So let's get into some of these race results. I already mentioned Boone Lloyd. He was good again. I saw his name in there a bunch. Edwin Meyer. I know you know him. Ezra Armbruster. This kid's man. He's really good. He's doing some great stuff right now. He's a young one too, right? He's an AMA 7, as is Bryson Smith, Beckham Smith's little brother, who's also an AMA 7. So we have a couple little freakazoid 7s. And then some pretty rad 8s too. So tell me about this 50 class. You're the 50 guy.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll go. I'll just touch on the 4 to 6 class really quick. That one's one that we won't know until
That's why I left it
we
off.
get
I,
it.
I
Yeah,
feel like
yeah, we'll
that's
get
like
into that. But I
Loretta
want to throw out
preview. Loretta
rider.
preview show. We'll
There's a
do it.
there's a kid riding Williams that's riding really good, and he's
I
probably
saw him at
yeah,
Spring
yeah.
Inning.
And they
Yes.
roll out, and his sister's racing Kyler, and we might talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, so you go to the 4 to 6 class, they're kind of sorting themselves out. But that 7 to 8 class, 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds better watch out because the 7-year-olds are coming in that class. I don't know if or when the last time. I don't know if it's happened. A 7-year-old has won the 57-8 class. I don't know if it's happened. It may have, but I know if it has happened, it hasn't happened in a long, long time.
Oh
This
yeah.
year would be the year it could happen legitimately. But let's start off with the 8-year-olds. Boone Lloyd, yeah, it just comes out for me. lot of intensity, a lot of intensity. Kid
Oh yeah.
wants to win. For me, I got to clean up a few things. It looks like when you don't spend the time at these training facilities, I'm not saying you have to. You can get away with certain things at your local tracks. He sits down an awful lot. I think it really bit him in the race's technique. He needs to come up a little bit, but the want is there. So he's going to be a player all year. Edwin Meyer, obviously, spent a lot of time with him. He's my 8-year-old, and he had some really good races. Probably consistently the winningest rider over this year in the 7 8-year-old class. And then you have the Fluhart kid floating around, Mickey Fluhart. He's right there on the
Yep.
edge of that. But then you run into Bryson Smith, Ezra Armbruster, and a Fender, Robert Fender.
Yep.
And
Yep. Yep.
Fender the Sender, he's in there. And then right off
Yep.
the tails, not far, is you've got Wyatt Tedesco, who was the PW
Yep. Little
champion last
Tedesco.
year.
Is he
So
is he related to
no, no,
the
no, no,
Tedesco family?
no,
Like Ivan Tedesco, the two-time Supercross
no.
champ and Motocross the Nations winner and motocross. Is he not related to them?
No, no. But I
Oh,
will say,
okay,
I mean, if
just
you look at
another
those
Tedesco.
guys, yeah, if you look at those guys, I've obviously worked with the Smith family. You have to. Bryson's probably he's that little brother syndrome. He's probably one of the most naturally talented riders I've ever seen. But
He is disgustingly talented on a motorcycle. And yes, he has little brother syndrome. I tell mom and dad all the time, I say, you just give him his time. He's gonna be hot and cold when he wants to be, but when he's hot, dude, the kid is so talented, dude.
yeah, and little Armbruster, as far as the 7-year-olds, he's probably the most technically sound, solid little
Yeah.
rider. Not going to make
Yep.
those last makes. Real charger, real down to business. And don't I've seen Fender once or twice, and then Tedesco's got a heart of gold. But the 8-year-olds, they definitely got those 7-year-olds coming. But it did look like to me, with an exception of maybe one moto, that Lloyd and Meyer were they still were daddies in the class, but the strides the 7-year-olds take between March and August
Yeah.
are a lot bigger than the strides that the 8-year-olds are
The eights are
taking.
tapped on those 50s. There's not much more to go on them, and the sevens still got a little room.
No, and they're playing the 65 game, going, "Oh man, we got to spend time on the 65, being time on the 65." And then some of
Right.
this, yeah, and 7-year-olds kind of get into that thing too, where the 7-year-olds are thinking, "Oh, we want to make it. We want to be the kid. We want to be the fastest 7-year-old in the 65 class." And I say, master that the 50 before you get them on the 65. They really want to brag about being the fastest 7-year-old in the 65, but that's like being the smartest kid with Down syndrome. And that's what I tell my families, because it's great, but you got plenty of time to learn. So let's master that. They can holler about, "Oh, we were the fastest 7-year-old," and I look back and they're in 22nd place. I'm like, that's awesome, but nobody's watching.
Yeah, no one cares yet, and it don't matter because what matters is when you turn 9 and get in the 9 class. And I wrote down Jet Rao, and I wrote down the word wow. Now I know Talon Rogers wasn't there. I feel like just based on my knowledge, those two are going to have a very exciting summer. I think they're going to have exciting Lorettas, as will others. But he was without Talon Rogers there, and it looked based on the results and the lap times and everything. He had an incredible Freestone. Greg.
Yeah, and the other races, obviously two of his 3 races for 20-minute motos, or sorry, 2 of his 4 in the 7 and 9 class. But I looked it up because he's a kid of mine. But yeah, obviously Brush coming in with a little injury. Yamina Burning,
Yep.
that's one we haven't mentioned yet.
Jimena,
She's on fire. We'll
man,
get we'll get to we'll
I've
get
known
we'll
her.
get to her on sprinting,
God.
where she had a better, but she had a big crash. So you got those guys were a little bit banged up, but for Rogers, or sorry, for Rao to come in, I did the math because I do race reports for all my guys, and I study that stuff. But yeah, Rao's average margin of victory was 59.5 seconds at Freestone.
Okay,
59.5.
there's not much to break down there other than good job. Wow, I put it in all
Yeah.
caps in our notes. Moving on to Beckham Smith. Probably don't need to spend a lot of time on him here either because, I mean, we're going to cover him multiple times throughout the rest of this as we get into spring training, Supercross and Motocross. But yeah, Beckham, just I guess your opinion on him. You've been working with him for a long time. He's looking like the very complete package right now in that 65. The 85 stuff's fun to watch, man. He's exciting on that, but the 65, he just looks complete. I mean, I
Yeah,
don't know what
yeah.
else to say. He's just a complete package.
No, no, and I'll deep dive just briefly on some things that if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably pretty heavy off in it. So I'm gonna deep dive a couple things. We talked about Cameron Buckman riding the 65 primarily. He had only the 65. He's beat everybody on the 50, right? There's nobody that he hasn't beat on the 50, so why not race up? With Beckham, we're putting a lot into the 85 and the 65 right now because I do think it's important to be in two different positions. That underdog that's got to race the faster guys, and then it's also people sleep on the importance of being the fastest guy and having that pressure on you to win. So if you can
Yep.
experience both those at the same time and then adapt to two different bikes, everybody wants to do a pro program right now, which a pro program is having a practice bike and the race bike exactly the same, riding one bike, finding that speed.
And trying to
But
win everything.
so my thing is ride the different bikes. If you're going to adapt to different bikes, you're going to adapt to different tracks. And then, obviously riding it's no secret out there that the Cobra 65 is completely figured out. It is a rocket ship. Anybody on the new KTM platform, it's not as good as the old one. Anybody that's got the money, and that wants to still stay on the KTM's, they go up and they round up and they buy the old bikes. So anybody on the newer bikes is definitely riding at a little bit of they're riding at I don't know, not an engine, not a chassis deficit, but you're riding at you're definitely riding an engine deficit in the long run. So to ride those two different classes is training. I think it's good, and it's to work with that. You're not always going to have the fastest bike. I think a lot of these parents want to go out and buy the best platform, just no matter what. But the fact of the matter is, even when you sign that pro deal, there's always going to be a team bike that's better than the rest. So you might as well, find who's helping you. Don't switch around. Stick to that bike, learn that bike, get it the best you can, and ride at a deficit if you have to. Because there's a certainty sometime if you go pro in your career, you will be riding a deficit.
And I'll just mention that real quickly because I know Talon Henson. I know the Henson family well. They're on the Yamaha 65, and I don't hate it at all for him. Long game. He's riding the wheels off that little thing. They're gonna all be on big bikes someday, and I don't mind that one bit either. And I like what you're saying about Beckham too, just riding the 65 and the 85, putting him in a class where you better win, you got the pressure to win, than riding a class where you get to take free shots at the older kids and bounce back and forth. I love it for him. He's in a unique spot where he gets to do that, and you're doing it perfect. I remember when we talked about that plan with him, it was like green light, like not even a question. I trust you anyway. I mean, I always have. But that one to me was like, all right, Greg, that is really, really good. Let's move on to the smaller wheeled 85 classes. So Jaden Smart wins. That kid's won so much. So if you don't know his name, you must be brand new. He's won a lot. Keller won the other one. But I'm looking at this class between Nightingale, Brennan, Steinbrecher. It's kind of a fun class, man. I just really like the small wheel 85 kids. To me, it's a very fun class to watch because you got a Suzuki, you got a Yamaha, you got a KTM. Nightingale's now on Husqvarna. Steinbrecher switched from gas to KTM. It's just a really diverse, fun little class, Greg.
Right, right. And I think the big stories in these classes are the Suzuki and the Yamaha. It's
Yep.
really cool to see those bikes up front. Just another reason to show that those bikes can win. Those motor packages are good. Obviously, every bike's got something that's good to it, and Jaden Smart's figuring out really that Yamaha can be up front. We'll talk about Tace Morgan too later, and then to see the lone
Yep.
Suzuki out there, Chase Brennan, running up front on the starts, and it's fun because those bikes really do, excuse me, those bikes really do work good for the smaller riders, right? I feel like the KTM chassis is really built for the bigger wheels, as it's a European brand and that's all they ride. So I do think in the 10 to 12 class, those bikes are highly competitive because I think the chassis is built around a smaller wheel setup where the KTM's built. So I think it's a really even setup. And to watch those kids come up, it's just as soon as you think somebody's separated, they're back. You know what I mean? As soon as Jaden Smart's kind of been the cream of the crop of that class, and of the 11-year-olds in that class, and now he's racing up to the 12-year-olds and doing it on a Yamaha. And then you've got Steinbrecher, which he was one of your guys, and with the cutbacks at KTM, he's in a spot where he's hungry and he wants to prove himself. So that's a class that I'm heavily involved into, and I'm really excited how that goes. There's so many storylines in that class, and we'll see how those unfold, going into the summer.
It's going to be a fun one. As is the bigger wheeled 85 classes. Gage Brown seems to have caught fire. I've always thought he was a great rider, but he's really putting it together right now. He's big on those bikes, man. He's making it work. Maddox Timmerman has caught fire too, and I'm talking locally and nationally. Maddox is on rails, and then of course you mentioned Tace Morgan, who to me has just always been so impressive. That's another just like little built machine. Comes out of that same area as Hymas and Townsend, and that's where he started. Now he's Florida now, but I like Tace Morgan. I like their family a lot. But any quick thoughts just on these bigger 85 classes with Brown, Timmerman, and Morgan being kind of the standouts?
Yeah, for sure. I think those were the standouts there. But you can't. There's guys. Colt Martin wasn't there, and then Nolan Ford had a an off week, and it's easy to go. And there's definitely more. Gage Brown for sure to me was. Uh, I was impressed. I feel like last year Gage had a little bit of a lull year. And now
It was
he's
a little
coming up.
off, little
Yeah,
off.
it's hard to say off because you're going
And
to
not
plateau at
bad. It was
times.
just
Yeah.
he was just kind of in a no man's zone there, not winning, but like right there, but just couldn't get him. But now
Yeah.
he's getting them. He's getting checkers.
Yeah, so I think you're going to see those kids they're going to have their off weeks and they're going to have their on weeks, and it's not pro motocross and we don't race every weekend. We don't get to see that, but those players are going to be there. I expect Nolan Ford to kind of find his footing a little bit, get his program dialed in, and be
And
up in
Easton
that mix
Graves
too.
too wasn't at this one. He wasn't at
Yeah.
this one either.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. So
um,
those guys, and then they're all making the hard decision of what are we doing? Are we, they're big wheels now, so the 85 to super mini switch isn't near as is drastic. So that's a cool thing. You're seeing a lot of dudes ride 85s and super minis, which didn't in the past because they didn't want that switch to big wheel, small wheel. So it's pretty cool. So it'll be cool to see how the Loretta Lynn's unfolds when they have to pick one CC bike to ride.
moving to Super Mini, Dane Pappas seems to me like maybe the cream of the crop right now. I think Colt Martin also is a kid that's going to challenge in that, depending on what goes on with him. Obviously, you know his situation better than I do, but I think that kid is awesome as well. But Dane Pappas, I wrote down Darren Pine. He did get a championship. He had a terrible crash last year at Loretta Lynn's. Wasn't his fault. It was a bike issue. Broke his femur. I mean, the kid came out and won the first Super Mini Moto last year as an AMA 13. Like, so impressive. And I feel like from there, it's just he's on the recovery, he's on the mend, he's not all the way back to himself, but he did still win one because Darren does win. Ryder Ellis is in there, Brody Moss, Reese Seba is really good, but yeah, Dane Pappas, his name's just in there too much, Greg. To me right now, if you made me rank him, that's number one Super Mini kid right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. I know there was talk of him going to the big bike this year, and why rush it, especially with the rules changing? I would be doing the same thing. Ride that super mini. Super mini is such a fun class. It's such a highly touted class. You learn so much on that bike if you can afford to build them and run at the top level, which they seem to be able to do just fine. I know his dad Nick really well, and he's really into the bike side of things and the building side, and I think he enjoys that. So, and then also being that age to go ahead and protect, like I say, protect your investment. You put so much time in, and you can learn a lot on the smaller bike, and you can do it safer. Those crashes get bigger as you move up. So I like the move to stay on Super Mini. But again, he's in that spot. He doesn't get that growing year where some people skipped it. There's no growing year. He's got to worry about the younger kids in Graves and Martin and Brown. You know what I mean? Those guys do roll pretty good. Seba's, in that same area where he's kind of a little bit older kid in that class, but it's not beating up on those little kids. They have to ride with a little paranoia because there's someone trying to get in there and take that spot.
It's crazy. You got Pappas, Pine, Ellis, Moss. I know all them. They're my son Evan's age, so I know that class very well. Those are all AMA 14s. Seba would be considered your old one at AMA 15, but I think back to a couple of years ago when you had Liam Olaf, Jeremy Fapani, Tiger Wood. Those were all AMA 15s. Gordon was the
Yeah,
young
Gordon.
one at AMA 14.
But he rode it
So it's just
again as
crazy.
15.
And then he rode it again as 15
And
against Deacon Deno.
and let's talk a little bit. I don't think Jeremy Martin, I think Adam Cianciarillo, James Stewart, Ricky Carmichael, they all rode those bikes as long as they could. They
Yep.
aged out those motorcycles, so definitely a lot can be learned there, and it can be learned safer for sure.
It's
Especially,
a size issue too. I mean,
oh,
some of these kids are
100%.
just like Gage can't go another. I mean,
No,
Loretta
no, no, no.
Lynn's, those bikes are going into the creek after the last moto at Loretta's, as are Pappas, as are Pine. I mean,
Right.
Ellis is the one that's honestly sitting kind of pretty in that class for another year based on his Cowie situation too. They don't have a 125, so I could see Ellis coming around next year possibly again, and probably being like ridiculously good as an AMA 15, which again was very normal in past years. It's not been normal in the last year or two, but in the past, it has been pretty normal to be in your AMA 15-year-old and ride a Super Mini.
Yeah, and I will say this from watching the 125 class, which we'll get into. Uh, 125 and Tristan Pruitt's old. He's on the old model KTM platform. There was a big uphill tabletop he was getting. Not for lack of trying. Those other 125s were all out there trying this. They never cleared it. Five of the super minis were able to clear it, and one of the 125s were. So when we're looking at a weight issue, maybe a height issue, but I do know guys like Nate Thrasher. and Max Volan rode those super minis to victories at close to 100. I know Thrasher was 138, 40 pounds, 140
So was
pounds close.
Olaf. Liam was
Yeah, so
135.
you can, yeah, you definitely can do it. Is it hurting you? I don't know if you can stay healthy. It's just everybody's path's different. So, but let's not forget how many of those 125 kids get, or super many kids get on the 125 and go, man, this thing's slow.
Yeah, oh, they all do, because power to weight ratio at Super Mini, if you get it right, is just, it might be the best bike on the planet, to be honest. Let's shift over to big bikes. Brady Olson. This kid is like, he's kind of one of those ones that's breaking out right now. Kane Bolasina, I know that's one of your guys. You know him well. They split championships. I thought this was great for Brady, a big breakout to him to get a championship, where Kane, I feel, based on my knowledge with you and just based on what I've seen with my own eyes, I feel like he's one of the favorites in the 125 stuff all year, as is probably Tristan Pruitt. But as far as Freestone goes, they split them. Your thoughts on Brady Olson and Kane Bolasina?
Yeah, Brady Olson, old dad's big rig. He's another younger kid, super tall kid. He's gonna be fun to watch. In that one, Brady's always surprising me. Um, just because I just never saw him as a player until this year, and he's showed up all season.
Big leap this year.
Yeah, and you got Kobe Lesser. He's been in 2 years on the 125, kind of doing that. I would say he was doing the Levi Kitchen route, except for he's much younger than Levi.
Yeah,
He's taller. I know he wanted to make
Kitchen
that.
went 2 years, 125. It's
I,
kind of rare, but
I
he
know,
did.
yeah, I know he wanted to make. I know Lesser wanted to make that jump to 250s, but stayed on 125s for support. And he was able to win a moto. But there's definitely going to be, for sure. There's not a lot of passing going on in that class, and I was really proud because uh, uh, I feel like what we not talking about is Pruitt's bike problems here. Pruitt is he had a lot of bike problems and blown up motors and stuff like that.
Yeah, we'll get to spring eating Supercross. He had some
Yeah,
there
yeah,
too.
and he did. So this is what happened at Freestone as well. Bike issues, and I think they're pushing the limit on the bikes. It's visually the fastest motorcycle in that class, hands down. But to not see, there's only so many people that are actually passing dudes in that class, and that's what I was proud about Bolasina. He was the only rider in that class that was making passes. Now let's say this: so you can passes within the top five. Yeah, if you start 15th, you can make some passes to 8th, 9th, whatever. But passes within the top five, being able to drive outside of the top five and up to the front. So that was a big moment to see that, and that was cool for me to watch. But all those kids are fast, and it's flip a coin. I don't. I think the most over all those races, I think the most motos anybody won was three. Out of 3 weeks of two classes, which I don't know how many motos that is, but like there wasn't any consistent winner of that class. I would
That
say the
class
most.
seems it's all over the place a little bit, which
Yeah,
is fun. I actually enjoy it. I enjoy the class.
there's such a small window on that motorcycle for executing a start with the clutch, and just like 125 Supercross back in the day, there's such a small window for a mistake. If you make a mistake, it's so hard to make up from that mistake because they can be really detrimental because of not having the power to pull you out.
Um, we'll move on to Carson Wood. I wrote down the Carson Wood show. I mean, we could talk about all of Spring Nationals. He's phenomenal. So I'm surprised, and I'm also not surprised. The not surprised part is he was on the Kawasaki Super Mini platform, which it's a tougher bike to ride than the KTM model on the Super Mini class. So I'm not surprised because he gets onto the Star Yamaha, which is also, by the way, he's not riding some ripping Star Yamaha. The kid's riding limited classes, and so it's not like he's got something that no one else has. I don't even think he's size-wise ready enough for even Star's package. So this is pure talent, what's taking place here. But getting onto that Yamaha 250F platform off of that bike, I'm not surprised that he is this good, but I am also surprised that he is this good. He's winning everything, and he wasn't doing that on the mini bikes. He should have won a lot more than he did, and
Yeah.
now he's winning like a lot. So again, Greg, talk me through this one because I'm surprised and I'm also not surprised at the same
Yeah,
time.
I am, and I was a little bit of a critic. I mean, not, I guess not. I don't have a social platform, but in conversations, I was a little critical with that idea to move up so quick. But he has put on some significant weight, and he rides that bike.
He's
Uh,
gotten stronger
yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
and he rides that bike really well. And the build of his dad, you can tell he spent some time in the gym. He's a pretty healthy boy. So I think he knows about being able to put some weight on. So he's got some weight on Carson. He looks phenomenal. He is riding the stock bike, but he also does have the full package. But I don't feel like he rode, or I don't know if it's the full package, but he does have the mod bike. It sounds much different, but to me, his results from the stock class to the mod class and lap times weren't much different, and just kind of proof that as far as
These 250s are good.
yeah, I think they're all pretty dang good. And are we using them yet? But yeah, it was Carson was much like I talked about in the 125 class. He was one of the only guys that could work his way from a bad start and pass all the way to the front. He did it. He did it multiple times. Like you have in your notes, Way maybe coming in. Vincent Way was coming in maybe a little bit under the weather. Whether that
Well,
was
he
his
got
injury.
hurt before Daytona
Okay.
Futures and then couldn't ride, decided to go to Freestone and pulled it off. Like, again, he was not 100%, but he's pretty phenomenal too. His move to the big bikes has been unbelievable. Those two, again, they were all together last year all the time, and now I feel like they're both pretty special in the 250s. But yeah, he was not 100%. So I think I'm excited to see a 100% version of Vincent versus Carson. That's going to be a fun one to pick right up again, right where they left off last year on mini bikes. So yeah, that's the point I want to make on Vincent. We have some Max Shane thoughts. Do you want to get those now, or do you want to save those for spring inning and do a Max Shane total, because he's a topic of conversation for
Yeah, we
both
can.
you and I, and for amateur racing. This kid is. I mean, to me, it's just a puzzle piece or two away from being like all the way together. The speed is ridiculous right now. It's just now or spring inning. When do you want to talk about Max?
Yeah, we'll touch on it later. There's a couple
Okay.
other people I want to touch on right now. Owen Covell and
Yep.
McCaden
Yep.
Fitch. Those were two guys that they had decent freestones, and we all know how it is. Like when you start in a hole, and you start with poor results, how it is to turn that around. And
Yep.
as we get in, those were names that weren't on the freestone list, but they were there. Yamaha showed up in full support, which was awesome. They worked with those kids through their bad motos, and they got a little bit better throughout the week. And it showed once Oak Hill came around. They used that week. Nobody panicked, and they turned their week around going into Oak Hill, and it was very cool to see those kids. So that class highly stacked. We are
Oh yeah.
missing. That was something I wanted to talk about. Obviously, we're probably not going to spend much time on the pro class because of the SMX Next program.
Yep.
It's very hard to kind of switch gears at that point. Maybe there is a caveat from that. We'll get to that at the very end of the show in Cade Johnson, which is the guy that showed up for all those and then had his best SMX Next finish of the year
Yep,
after
he's like
racing
the
two
only one,
motocross
really.
races.
The only
Yep,
one. Yep.
yep. So
But 250B, just want to throw these names out so we can really look forward to what I think may be one of the sickest summers for 250B. Deacon Deno, Seth Dennis, Grayson Townsend, Brennan Harrison, Wyatt Thurman. Depending on where they all line up, B limited for wherever they end up. B is good this year. Limited's going to be good. Mod's going to be good. Schoolboy's going to be good. This is going to be one of the more fun, enjoyable, like throw them all in there and see what happens. B years, man. I can't wait.
all right,
Any
what
thoughts on
else?
that?
Yeah,
No,
I mean,
okay.
I mean,
Well, okay.
straight up, it is,
Yep.
and honestly, maybe we get into this in a later episode. System's broken there. I don't think that you should be a B rider and riding the SMX Next. It's just it's a way to play a game. Max Shane is top three last year in the B class. Also, Grayson Townsend won the B class last year. These are guys that are laying back and playing a game, which is something that I'm helping Max play that game, but completely irresponsible in the betterment of the sport, for my opinion. There's no reason that you can't run 1 or 2, even 3 years at A, especially, and hopefully that's where it goes.
Yes. I can say this now. I don't know why it didn't cross the finish line, but there were some real serious talks about changing the structure to where the B class would be more of an extension of C, and A being a real class. Like when you get to A, you sit in it for a while. Because right now, you know how it is. You lay back B, 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 and then A into pro.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
sometimes you skip A, and it's
yeah,
like, I mean, Cochran never rode A. He went from literally B to his first pro national.
yeah. You're
But
playing a
no,
game.
I don't know why it didn't happen. I know Ryan Holiday was a big advocate for it, and he shared with me his thoughts, and I thought it was going to happen where they were going to change the structure around where B is a true amateur class, and if you do good in it, you're out of there like before you can blink.
And it would
And it didn't
fix
happen. It didn't
it
happen.
would it would fix racing for me, because
And
local
and, and
racing
if
would
and
bring in
if
pro
SMX
classes,
next
and
win
you could
A
make some
only.
money. Man, I mean, people need to go to these local races to be able to make money. A classes
Yes.
are non-existent right now because people are playing a game in the B class, and it's a game we played growing up with my brother. It's a game that everybody's played since then, and it's fine. It's just been the way. I think the SMX Next program and the combines are kind of almost a means to the end to have basically like we've talked about almost like 2 to 3 years of A with this. And hopefully it goes that way, because if it was up to me, and we didn't have to play this game to earn a ride, it would be nice to be running a lot of these kids in the A class, and them
Yep.
help paying for the races at these local races. They can get race experience, get their money back, and start to kind of support themselves.
Agreed. Quick thought on Diesel Thomas. I have one. I don't know if you do, but just this kid is going to be one kid that you see in the pro class someday at an outdoor national, and he's going to go 12, 14, 11, 9, 13. He's going to 2-3 years from now, watch him in the pros just clicking off 10 to 12s all summer long, like those 450 dudes do every once in a while. His amateur career is weird to me, but I see him as a pro. He's
So
going to
you're
be he's going to 450 outdoor pro in 2 years, getting 12th like every weekend.
So is
I
it
can
gonna
see
be
that so clear.
like a Mitchell Oldenburg, Grant Harlan?
Yep. Henry Miller did that one year. Cody Schock did that one year, and then Cody Schock, my God, I mean, we'll talk about that's pro talk for y'all, but wow, go look at his Loretta Lynn's results, and then go look at his pro career. The dude just got second at a Supercross, riding for Club MX, which is just what a rad story that is. But anyways, Diesel Tom, that's all I had on him.
Yep.
He's out there doing his thing
good.
in the A class, and he's going to be a very good pro.
Yeah.
I just
Well, one thing,
I know
flying a
that.
bit under the radar. Obviously being able to ride a 450, always riding a fast bike. He rides the 450 better. Just hasn't really been able to show up on the 250 like he's 450. You can be a 450 rider, but you have to show up and win the 250 class too, because nobody's looking to hire a 450 rider, right? And his 250 results have been. He's such a better 450 rider, and I think that's hurt him with the talks.
But when I say what I'm saying about this 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, I see it on a 450.
Hmm.
That's where I see it. Even Bryce Shelley maybe last year, or the year before, it was the same thing, crushing some 450 outdoors. It's just, he's one of those kids. He falls right in line with that. This would be another place where we do a commercial. Maybe Joe does. I don't know. Just for those of you out there that don't know, but I have the best producer in the game. His name is Producer Joe, and he's a magician. Greg, you know the magician, Joe Gallo. So
All
he
the
may put
pictures
some
you
music
sent me of
here.
Joe.
Yeah, you don't know what he looks like. Nobody does. Nobody knows. He's not even real. He's actually AI. I've had AI way before anybody, and he's actually fake. He's not even real. I programmed this AI computer to talk back to me. But anyways, no, he's going to do something cool here. Maybe not. Maybe we just roll through. But anyways, that's my man, Producer Joe. All right, on to Spring-a-Ding. Quick thoughts. Mine are the Supercross portion. Last year was the first year of it, and man, I think they were just like, whoa, like a little overwhelmed. It was kind of chaos. It was madness. They knew it. They said, well, wow. I thought this year's was really good. I enjoyed it. Now, maybe I had the best seat in the house. I was up with Kevin Windham calling the main event, but I just loved it. I don't even know what else to say other than I think the track was cool. The racing, I mean, you had Boone Lloyd and Edwin Meyer in one of the best battles I've ever seen on a 50. The 250B, the 125 class, the Super Mini class was light. That was the one where I was a little shocked. Like, it was Reese Seba and Knox Lewin were pretty dominant there. Jackson Vick was pretty good too, but that class was a little light. But other than that, Greg, Supercross at Spring-a-Ding was really, really fun, man. I think they nailed it this year.
All right, yeah, I'll start off by talking about like awesome event. Like bravo to those guys and bringing it at that stage. Didn't makeshift it. Like it's made its own event. Like they didn't.
It's awesome.
They've watered it down just enough, but they put it in a Supercross setting to give it the feel. The what they've done with that race. If you show up at that race and you don't race that, you're truly missing out.
Yeah,
Definitely
blowing.
something.
You gotta race it.
It's so good, and you can't bury your head in the sand and skip it, because it's going to catch up to you. 100%, it's going to catch up to you, and you can see the guys. It becomes every year you skip it, thinking you're going to be more ready the next year. It becomes a little bit more dangerous because the speeds have come up and you're less experienced. So make sure you do that. And oh my God, that's an event. And I did talk to Denny there. It was like, man, open up the gates, go advertise for that thing in town, sell $10 tickets. They got the cantina there. They've got everything. They could sell that as an event, and that's another thing I'd like to see.
They probably
Is
will next year. They probably
and I
will.
talked to him. Denny was like, "Oh, it's growing. There was more riders." I was like, "No, I'm not talking about the riders. Bring the people in. Go there, get the kids. And not that they would do it, but I think that would be a killer event to happen Saturday at the end of the week. Little opposite. I don't know. I don't know if they'd ever do it, but for the event factor of people being able to roll up and spectate that event,
I see what you're saying.
awesome, awesome. Maybe you bring in 3,000 spectators, some grandstands, make your money back that way.
Grandstands on the other side. The other side could use a big old set of stands, and now we're talking.
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
talking.
So I
Great
would like to
track.
see that. And
Okay.
then you talked about the super mini class. I want to give uh, Knox Lewin is a freak show at Supercross. That's all he did all
Yes.
year. I do
He
not
led
think
he
Seba.
led some SMX Fort Worth laps last year too. This isn't a surprise. He was
He did.
really good there too.
So I think you put Pappas out there, you put Martin out there, you put whoever out there. Seba rode his ass off. I don't think anybody else that sat that out. I don't think they're beating him.
They were pretty flawless too. I mean, they were. I mean, it was pretty tapped. I don't know. I mean, if at best you match them,
Yeah, and I
you
think
don't. You
anybody
probably
sitting
don't beat them.
in exact anybody sitting out that race is obviously questioning their ability at that. You know what I mean? You're not gonna sit that race out if you're going, hey, I
If
got
you're good
this.
at it.
You know what I mean? So I don't want to
Yep.
discount those two because I think they have everybody else covered. I don't think that super mini class. I think that super mini class is soft because the guys that were going into that were they felt like they weren't going to win. Because maybe they were ill prepared or not ready, but
Hmm.
they didn't want a bad showing, so their loss.
Yep. Max Shane. Is it Riley? Riley Bussey?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's Riley. Is it Boosie or Bussy? I don't know.
Bussey. I like him a lot.
Yeah,
He looks like Levi Kitchen to me, man. Like identical. His riding style. I mean, dude, change his number in his gear, dude. It's like twinsies. And then Chase Lawton got one too. Max Shane, I just got to give him credit, man. That video of mine that went viral on Instagram. You know what? I don't blame him. I'm glad he did it because that was cooler than just not doing it. I mean, it didn't work, but dude, he ripped around the outside and said, screw it. And to
yeah.
me, it was the coolest thing ever. Like, who cares? You wasn't going to get him. So just rail around the track. I thought it was
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, it came from back, and if nobody knows what we're talking about, Boosie or Bussy Riley, he had a great race going. Max had some trouble in the beginning and made up a huge gap and was running off some steam. And if you didn't see the video, right before the finish line, he jumped off the track and passed him off the track right before the finish line. Um, and Max got over there and he was like, "Well, they were trying to put him on the top step because they can't see what's going on. All they see is timing and scoring." I said, "Max, you sit your ass on that second place. Don't take this kid's moment
Yeah,
away."
don't. Yeah,
He's
don't you
like, "But
dare.
the
And hey,
results
hey,
say."
hey, we had Mike Burkeen with us up in the booth. And I'm like, hey, in Supercross, they bring Pelletier on for things like, so we put Burkeen right on the headset. And he said right then, nope, absolutely not. And I think, did he lose another spot too? Did he get third?
I think they docked him too.
Yeah, I think they
Yeah.
docked him 2 spots, which is unfortunate because he rode
Yeah.
so damn good. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up because it was one of the funnier moments of the whole race. Lawton did a really good job too, holding off Bussy in one of those main events at the end. I thought he played great defense. It was a good race for Chase Lawton. I'm gonna move on to C class. We'll touch on it really quickly, but here's another one. I mentioned Cooper Bergeron at the beginning, but this kid, Alessio Chavez, that is the most complete looking C rider I've ever seen. He is really good. Now, I don't know if he's really fast because I didn't see him on outdoor stuff. You did, but man, is he a good rider. He is solid. Where did he come from? And with
I
his name,
don't.
is he from another country? Is he?
No, no, that's what I said. Of course he is. He's got to be from South America. He's probably riding pro and making big
That's what I
money
thought.
down there. Big
I was thinking he was
sponsor.
25 years old, racing pro class down in Costa Rica or something. But
Yeah,
no,
he's
is he from
for sure.
Wyoming or
He's
something?
sponsored by the cartel or something. No, yeah, he's just from Wyoming. I don't know. I don't know. I'm like, no, he
He's
didn't come. He
really
lives there
good.
now. Yeah. I guess I don't know. I need to talk to those guys a little bit more, but apparently he made it to Loretta's last year. An injury, past regionals, a late injury, kept him out of it. They decided to go ahead and heal up and
Oh,
stay
see
in.
that? Yeah, there's a few of
I
them
think
every
I
year.
think that's the case. There's another kid in that area, Sutton. He didn't show up, but he's
I've
not
heard that
far
name.
off.
Yep.
He showed up at our camp last year. Missed the regionals at the regionals, and he showed up at our camp last year and was faster than all the C riders that made it, and we had C riders go in the top 5. So. Yeah, it'll be interesting. We won't know how that one unfolds, but you got your Bergeron kid on the East Coast, and your West Coast kid is Chavez. And I will say, historically, the West Coast kids have come up up out front in the C class. I think it's a
Which
little
is
bit more out,
crazy.
just a little more outlaw out there, right? It's just there's not as many. There's not as much pressure to move up. I don't feel like there's a lot of people doing it and running
Yeah.
that route.
Anyways, just want to bring him up because he was very impressive to watch. I was like, geez, man. All right, mini bikes for Supercross. We'll rip through these Supercross results quick so we can get to the motocross side. But Boone Lloyd again, Edwin Meyer. The only reason I bring them up is because they had an epic battle. I mean, we're talking like they look like little 250 pros out there. I couldn't believe the craft. It was insane to watch them. And again, the track helped that. The track helped that happen. Kudos to them on the track build. But yeah, Boone Lloyd, Edwin Meyer, maybe the battle of the mains, dude. 50 riders stuffing and blocking, and it was incredible.
Yeah, and I had to get on to Kane Bolasina and some of the other kids that I trained because the 250 riders had more racecraft and better race situational awareness than the other kids did. They ran close. They bumped each other. As far as I know, there wasn't any complaints. Nobody went down. It was good hard racing, and
It was
it was
awesome.
really cool to see two kids that want to win. Like I said, I think they're I had heard, I could be wrong, so don't, if you're listening, don't kill the messenger, but I had heard they were a wrestling family. So they're not afraid of a little close contact. And then Meyer came, he played football growing up, his dad, and obviously not scared to teach that mentality a
All
little bit
right.
of
There we
just a little
go,
bit more,
everybody.
couple, yep. So maybe a
Hit
little
the
bit more
fence lines
aggression
on
out
the
of those
50.
two.
50 classes. Be on the fence lines for these two little physical, not afraid to square up kids, man. It was fun to see. We can get into Talon Rogers when we get to the motocross side
Yeah.
because of him and Jet Rao, but I just got to say, you know this because you know him. I know him very well. He's a kid that I work with, and I was with him today, actually. He's a Supercross
Yeah.
freakazoid, man. I mean, he blows me away every time I watch him ride, and you've seen him since the very beginning. Elite A+ Supercross rider.
Yeah, so SXU, a little shout out. We put this plan together a long time ago. It was part of my deal where I was getting kids on a supercross track way younger than normal. Definitely a lot of that's talent, but most of that's work on their part. Talon's
Yep.
always been his timing has always been like impeccable. He could always hit like the distance. Now let's say his English or his finesse hasn't always been with the timing, so everything maybe looked a little sketchier than it was, but he would always hit the mark.
Yeah,
I
he's
feel like it's
flawless on his landings.
I feel like it's coming to where he's getting a little bit more of that. Yeah, I would say that finesse in the air, kind of being able to put the bike where he wants and set it up rather than just make the A to B leap, and it
Yeah, it's
shows.
funny. I actually I find him fun to watch because he rides with like the physicality of like a Eli Tomac. He's like a brute, but he also is as precise and accurate as like any technical supercross. He's like a technician. He kind of has the best of both worlds. He's like a little bit of both, and that's what's for me. It's fun watching him. He does scare me sometimes because he does some big stuff, and then he does it so good. I'm like, okay, I don't even know what to say. Like, okay,
Yeah.
even though he scares the crap out of me all the time. Even today, can I do that? No, Talon, no. And then Absher Hall did this jump today, and he's like, looking at me like, and I'm like,
My
no,
turn.
not today. You're on a 65. He's on an 85. Just no.
Yeah.
Anyways, we'll get to him though.
Textbook pass though on
Oh,
Meyer. It's always to be at the end of that
yeah.
thing. You never want to be, but when you're passing somebody that's a good rider, last thing you want to do is give them an opportunity to come back. I don't think the hit was intentional, but you give him two options. It's let off the gas or exit stage left, and you know Meyer learn the hard way. But he's also been doing enough arena cross and stuff like that, and then you know. He put himself in a good position where obviously he's a little guy. Rao definitely made it harder on him towards the end of the race because of the whoops. Rao definitely got those legs and he used it. So again, those two, on Supercross were really close lap time wise. They were right there. But you can tell that Talon's been working on a lot of Supercross. He definitely he put it down in those classes.
Next would be Beckham Smith and Levi Geis. We've already talked about them a little bit, so we don't need to go into much detail, but both of them were really impressive too. Geis, again, he's just coming out right now. He's all of a sudden kind of emerging as really, really fast. And then Beckham, again, we both know him so well. I think the amateur pits know him well too. Beckham also won an 85 title. I wanted to see him and Gavin Welzine square off because Gavin Welzine is also going early on that 85 and riding it very well. And Gavin fell in the corner after the finish line, washed out. They were, I think, Moto 1, and it was a little wet. But God, those two are going to be fun to watch. Gavin, good little rider. He's a little bigger than Beckham, so I think he's got a size and strength advantage right now. But at the same time, they're both so young on 85s. They're 10s, and they're both like freaky good for that 10 class. Steinbrecher got one. I'm very happy for him because he did not come in 100%. He was banged up, and I mean they're very. diligent about just, going through the hardships and just keep going, keep going. And for me, I really wanted to see him get that one, and he did. So for Aiden Steinbrecher to win that title, that was huge. He's a good Supercross rider too. I think he's a pretty good Supercross rider. Cash Anderson, I bring up his name. I don't know him. Who's Cash Anderson?
He's the 85 guy.
Yeah, and he won one of these titles too. One of the
Man,
Little Wheel titles.
shame on me. I'm soft in that. I'm soft in that. Well, was that an open class? Was he a 13, 14 year old,
Maybe.
or that could be it? Because a lot
No.
of maybe a lot of those kids aren't riding the small wheels, so they might. I don't know if they had a small wheel class. I'm still kind of lost a little bit because not everybody's really conformed on the big wheel, small wheel thing on all age group classes. So that could have snuck in there, or maybe he just snuck up and got one. Maybe he's a Supercross specialist, or maybe we're going to start seeing Cash Anderson up front a lot. I don't know. I didn't do my proper research on
This is
him.
back to our where's his name?
Noble.
Tommy Doble. This is Tommy
Nice.
Doble. Okay, this is another one. I don't know him, and you did really well. And now I'm watching and I'm
Back
looking.
it up.
That's just how
Yep,
it goes.
back it up.
Yeah. I mentioned really quickly in our notes, Mickey Fluhart won the E.
Hmm.
I love Mickey Fluhart. He's another one that scared me. I was coaching him one day, and his dad had him jump this big jump, and I'm running there to tell him no. No, and then he made it perfect. I'm like, all right, jeez, okay, fine.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll always remember that day with them. But yeah, they're Virginia. So another one that's going to just sneak up on everybody. But yeah, Mickey Fluhart won the E, and then I have Reese Seba did win both. And like you said, he had to ride everything he had. Knox Lewin, I think, was faster. Knox just blew it a couple times. He made some mistakes, but Knox Lewin was really impressive in the super mini classes.
His whip speed was
Yeah,
out of control. It was out of control.
straight
I mean,
pro, straight up pro.
yes, the best whip speed all night out of anybody. Like maybe Max Shane, but that made Max Shane had a better
Yeah,
whip speed. I think that was the only person that had. I was talking to the super mini kids, going like, "Sure, Lewin's got everybody covered in the whoops."
yeah, he was great. But Seba got them both. So good job on Reese Seba to not only ride the Supercross class, but get it done. So all right, we'll move on to motocross. I wrote down for the 50s, Armbruster won one, Meyer won one. Again, we already kind of went over that. Armbruster is a 7, just very complete. He's another one of those where you just watch him and you're like, God, like he just does so much right. He's just a very good rider. And then Edward, of course, being probably your 8, right? He'd be your lead 8-year-old right now. So they both split. Anything to add on them other than what we've already said? We covered them both. So
No,
anything
not
unique?
really. Just those kids want to win so bad. Every single one of them. Boone Lloyd, Ezra Armbruster, Edwin was so distraught over the second place. One of our trainer, John Carlo, had to pull him up on the stage because he was so distraught. So teaching lessons like that, you got to
Yep.
you can't be a sore loser. But that's how bad these kids want to win. You would think second place they'd be happy, battled, had great lap times, but that I'd rather teach a lesson like that than try to pull something out of a kid.
Yep. 7 and 9, Jet Rao, Talon Rogers. Again, I think Tate Brush is going to be good when he's at his full strength, and others will emerge. That's how it happens. But right now, I mean, we can go through them kind of quickly. Are they kind of the two? I mean, you would put on paper as the two.
No, no, no. I think Brush and Tarnow
So it's
roll into
so
that.
it's a 4. So it's
I
more
mean,
of
if
a
you look
4.
at lap times, Rao took a extreme bump into the open classes and stuff like that. He's emerged as one, in my opinion. And then
Okay,
Talon, if you look in the outdoors, if you take Supercross out of the equation, go look at the open results. It was something I hadn't seen from a kid that age. It's super impressive. He's a tall kid. He'll be a kid he'll do the Sawyer Geek path next year. I think he's going to have to.
so like Sawyer, Geek, Alex Campili, Gavin
Yeah,
Welzine.
yeah.
He'll just go AMA 1085 and just move up.
Yeah, and the only reason I say this, I look at those. Obviously, it's a reset, and everybody's going to get better. I just don't think you can judge a tape brush off this. And Shannon Tarnow was gone. Those
Okay,
have been the two major players that have jumped up in that. Yamina Burning was lights out, the best I've ever seen her, besides when she was on a 4 to 650 and beat those boys. So I think we're going to look into, yeah, it's gonna be pretty wild. I just know going into Loretta's last year, it's hard to discount Tate Brush. Big switch to Yamaha. I think he's gonna figure that out and then run the. So I don't know. I wouldn't take too much from that class. Uh, I would look more into the open class to see, how that spread out and lap
got it,
time. So,
got it. Okay,
but they're all five. I wouldn't be surprised. Tarnow, Talon. um, Brush,
Brush,
and
Rao.
Rao. One of those 5 wins Loretta's, it's not a surprise. I hate like emerging after that, like you said, if you look at that, but like I think it's flip over the cards. It's a new deck of cards going
That'll be
into
fun. And then
Loretta's.
Buckman too. Buckman's good at Loretta's, man.
Yeah.
Little AMA8 Buckman. He is really good at Loretta Lynn's, and they want to win that class. They're racing up, but they want to win it. That's their
Yeah,
goal is
yeah.
to chase it, and they put the work in. That kid is really good too. Who's João Ferreira?
No, I think he's a Mexican kid. I could be wrong.
Okay, he was pretty good too.
There was a huge Mexican presence at Oak Hill. Lots of Mexican riders make that drive because you can get across the border to Texas, and yeah, we saw and a lot of fast Mexican riders. So I think, I mean, I
Okay.
could be wrong, but I saw a lot of Mexican kids there, and yeah, he put it down. He laid it down. Did better in Supercross and outdoors, but he looked
He just
really
stood
good.
out. Another name that I was like, oh, wow, okay, and watched him on Supercross and liked it. Beckham Smith, Levi Geist again, 65, 10 to 11. They're pretty impressive there. Nothing to add. 85 class, Jaden Smart, already talked about him, won again. Gage Brown, talked about him, won again. Jackson Vick did get one. There's another kid that I really like. Just seems to be a little hot and cold with the results, but I feel like the effort's always there. But I don't know him that well, but I like him. Again, I don't even know why, but I like Jackson Vick, and he did get a title in the
Yeah,
85
Vic,
class. One of them.
awesome family. He's come up here, never trained with me, come up here on my open ride days. Super easygoing family. You don't get that vibe of like tension. Look, feels like they get along with everybody. Really awesome family. I know he spends a lot of time. They train at Oak Hill, have trained at Oak Hill. They have been training guys out there for a while. So not a surprise that he did well at that track.
Super Mini was Dane Pappas again, splitting with Reese Seba. Seba again got 2 Supercross titles, then did get one on the motocross side. Are they 1A, 1B? Are they pretty much like very, very similar? Do you give Pappas an edge right now? And then also, where does Colt Martin sit in this if he's there and healthy? Because I know he was just turning it on as of like recently. I know at Chicani, I think he had some pretty impressive. I have a feeling at full strength that we're talking about more than Pappas and Seba here. I think we're talking Martin too. Am I
Yeah,
accurate on that?
turn the cards over again. That's a full new deck. You got Graves, depending on what he decides to ride. Martin, yeah, it's hard because I try not to. I know these people personally, and for me, I don't want to play favorites. But there's definitely some traits I see, like the Townsend traits I saw in certain people. With Martin, it's just I think he
He
is
reminds me of Townsend a little bit.
he's a grinder. Like he is he's not he will put in the work. Adam's a great friend of mine, but as it will be admittedly one of those mad moto dads that we talk about. Like, and I can say that we're like I said, I'm not here to say anything, but Adam will admit that he was one of the craziest moto dads ever. So uh Colt's got a thick skin. He knows how to lay down some hard work, and he's gonna be dangerous. Pappas has some of the best bike control I've ever seen. Clutch
He's
really,
late too.
his clutch,
He's not a forever amateur kid. He's late to the game.
his clutch work on the starts, and you're gonna go to Loretta's, and the more technical the track gets, I think you're gonna see Dane do very well. I think Dane's going to be hard to beat. He's going to be ready. I don't know, like betting odds. I don't know what betting odds look like, but you would have to put the odds on favorite as Papas going into August, in my opinion. But
Okay.
doesn't take. I mean, they're going to put odds on Chase Sexton probably every weekend. So I don't want this to be again. It's flip the deck. I wouldn't want to put any of my own money on that class for the top three.
Be fun to watch. I can't wait. 125s. Pruitt got one. Bolasina got one. So Bolasina got one at Freestone, got one at Spring-A-Ding. Any thoughts on them outside of what we've spoken about? Pruitt, again, I know he's had a lot of bike problems. I do feel like he's a somewhat complete package as a rider when it comes to that class. Like he seems I don't see a lot missing. He's got it all other than a couple bike issues. And then Bolasina, again, he's newer to the top as of last year and this year, but raw speed, I mean, kind of freaky on the raw speed side. So are they the two favorites going into this next batch of the year, or is that still like a wide open deal?
I think it's impossible to call Bolesine the favorite. Pruitt, yeah, lesser, like going into this year would have been the favorite. Winning motos at Loretta's last year, winning Ponca City, it going into the second year. Brand new team with that Altus Yamaha Motorsports team. They will get better. Bike will get better. Uh, but here's the big thing. Everybody's kind of switched to that Yamaha. Except for we want to talk about Braxton Mess. He's on the new. He's the only one that
Yep.
is running up front on the newer bike. And he's a
Yes.
baby in that class. Had awesome results. He's a 13-year-old in that class. Probably one of the most impressive things I've seen all
Yeah,
week.
he's
Although he
you're not going
didn't.
to see him maybe in the results, but who cares?
Yeah,
He's so good. He is
he
just whatever.
was.
Just ride this timeline out, bro. He Braxton is he's very good and very complete also.
And I think when you're looking at that 125 class, it switched. I mean, last 3 years ago with the older bike before the fuel injection, it was all KTM's and one or two Yamahas, and now it's completely flipped. It's all you're only going to see one or two newer KTM's. The older ones you're going to see have been bought. I know, Pruitt's program is tight. They're down there at the Baker's Hat factory, and they went and bought up as many old bikes as they can. To get that because the motor platform on that older KTM is definitely the fastest. So one thing I did notice in that class, and I said it once before, I'm super proud of Bolesina. He was the only one that passed kids in that class. The only other kids that won motos in that class started first or second. No, you know, it's hard to make passes in that class. You have to be very comfortable because those kids are smart. You have to be very comfortable going and sending it into a secondary line that you may have never hit before at Mach speed and not letting off. And it was really cool to see. I think the top, Bolesina got a third in a Schoolboy 2 heat. He went from 12th to third. And then
That's
also
awesome.
on the, ripping by guys on 250s. And then got a sixth overall in that class. And I think the next best overall finish in the Schoolboy 2 class on a 125 was 17th or 16th. It's somewhere in
Right.
that area. So a big gap. So that was a big metric on me to who's able to make passes. Is this going to be a game of starts? I mean, it always is. So if it is at Loretta's, you're either going to have to pull all the starts. You're going to be capable of passing because no matter what, whether there's 2 lines or 10 lines, there's still going to be the fastest line. So you're going to have to be really good on that 125 to make passes, and that's what I saw out of Bolesina. So I wouldn't say he's the favorite. He probably turned the most heads in the 125 class. I think the fastest lap times might have came from him or Pruitt. Brady Olson was super impressive, but again, consistency out of all those guys. A lot of those guys they start in seventh and they might pass to sixth. Not a lot of passing going on. The EBR guys were good, but again. Uh, not a lot of passing between. Hargrove rode really good, but again, kind of just wherever they started, that's where they finished, with exception of
Okay.
Bolesina.
I put down the Carson Wood show again, stacking plates, just racking up a bunch of ones. I guess my question on him, I know we're going to have plenty of shows by Loretta's, but what do you think he does? Does he go limited at Loretta's, or is that just what he's doing now? You think he goes B-Mod? I mean, we're talking again, Deno and Dennis and Way. I mean, it's going to be weird to see what they all do, but what do you think he does? Just if you had to guess.
If I had to guess, he'd run a mod class. You know
Like
what I
Schoolboy
mean?
too?
Yeah, they've got plenty of stuff, whatever they want. But I would assume with his success at these nationals, he'd go that route of running those classes. I don't see why you wouldn't. There's no reason not to. He's already shown that he can. Obviously a few people didn't show up in that class, but I would highly doubt that he's scared of guys that he's already beat on the Super Mini.
Chavez again in the C class. Does Bobby Reagan sign him after Loretta's if he goes 6-0 in the C class? I
Oh,
mean,
you're putting Bergeron. You've already given up on Bergeron.
no, I mean this Chavez kid
That's your
doesn't
guy.
lose, man. He is my guy, but this Chavez kid don't lose, man. He's indestructible. Max Shane, very impressive. And I put him next to McCaden Fitch, who did get one. That kid is freaking fat. He goes for that. Talk about all in, man. Oh my God, he tries so hard, and he got one. And the reason I put them kind of together is because there's a sick video of them online. Just dang, dude, that was a rad video. But that's gonna close our show out for tonight. Would be Max Shane and McCaden Fitch talk. So what do you got overall on Shane? Since we haven't been able to get into his whole situation here. And then of course McCaden Fitch again getting a title, getting one.
Yeah. So let's start off by just talking about the Schoolboy 2 class, because this is an amateur podcast, and all you guys, that's the biggest thing I hear. Oh, he needs a mod bike, or the kid needs a mod bike. 1 and 2 in the 250B class, there were on completely stock motorcycles with McCaden Fitch and Max Shane. With
Well,
a star
and
bike on the
to
line.
add to that, Brennan Harrison won Minios in the 250B mod on a stock bike too. He didn't win the
Perfect.
stock class; he won the mod class. So I just want to add to that point that yes, you're right.
Good. So get that out of there. Yeah, Fitch was crazy. Those two ride together a lot. And honestly, what we do here, as far as working hard, and riding every day and training, we're doing it. Everybody's doing it everywhere. They're doing it. Whether you're at MTF, or whether you're at Robbie Rayner's, or whether you're down there at Oak Hill, or whether you're at Baker's Factory, or wherever you are at Club MX, everybody's putting in the work. So at this point, it's like, okay, how do we figure out how to get to that next that step? I don't think we're in the point. You did a great video about effort. I saw on your Instagram, Daniel, about it's the times you're winning, it doesn't feel like you're trying as hard. And when you're out there getting your teeth kicked in, you can be trying as hard as you want. So we've made some adjustments with Max and his program, on the in between the ears side. Definitely aren't. I'll tell you right now, we're definitely not working any harder. We're just working smarter. We're bringing in some different things with uh, you know uh, some outside help of the industry, bringing some old people in, and working with some science to try to get him back. But it, that's a little long-winded, and that's kind of off topic, but we did, going into this, it was what kid that's already beat these kids, he had to swallow his pride, because we're going to put him on a stock bike and you're going to ride 5 classes. So that's
Yep.
something I was really into. A lot of kids were riding just 2 classes there, kind of treating it like the pros. Oh, I'm only riding mod, or I'm only riding stock, or my team won't let me do this or that. Let's sign them up for every single class. So we rode 5 classes at both nationals. And it showed. We learned a little bit every time, and by the end of Oak Hill, he had done well, and he got outrode by a younger McCaden Fitch, and that's hard. Like we talked about, that's harder for an older kid to swallow when a young buck beats you like that you're supposed to beat. But that's also something we've been working on, is not worrying about it. At the same time, uh, Chase Sexton's not worried about Jet Lawrence being 8 years younger than him. You know what I mean? Or seven.
It's not the
Yeah, it
age.
doesn't matter anymore. So we gotta make a shift earlier with the kids, and we as parents, or parents and trainers, have kind of maybe put that in your head, like it matters. So just working on an in between the ear game, and trying to get as much experience as an amateur, because that's what amateur racing should be about, is gaining as much experience as possible. So that's been the approach with Max Shane, and it's been cool to see. Obviously had a lot of wins, but he hit the track more than anybody except for Jet Rao. Rode 5 classes, and so did Beckham Smith. So if you were wondering, I think that the 3 guys that I really heavily deal with were the only kids that rode 5 classes at all these races. So in case you were wondering, that's my approach to it. Not to win them all, but to gain the most out of it. Because at Loretta's, they're going to limit you to 2. So let's get ready for the showdown. Let's learn as much before there, and let's prepare to win that one.
I love it. Yeah, that was a big part of our talk. Before I had left KTM, that was the last kid that I signed, was Max Shane, and part of that discussion was, what are we going to do with him? It's not just, you don't just sign a kid and go, okay, he's signed. It's like, what's the plan? And you and I had spoke at length, like, what are we going to do with this? What is the plan? And the plan was race as many times as possible, just drop the gate, and he's doing that. Like I said, some are going well, some aren't going well, but he is gaining so much experience, and the speed's coming around. Like, his light's out on his speed. So, yeah, I'm glad we were able to make that deal happen and work together on that plan. And you're the one implementing it, and I'm glad you went on board with it. I got it. This is the Landon Gibson plan. That's where I got it from. When Landon Gibson got on a 250, they put him on every single gate that could possibly drop. And guess what? By the end of each amateur national, he was pretty tired. But
Right.
man, did he have a lot of good motos in there on his way to learning that bike. And then, he's a pretty phenomenal amateur turning into that transition A, and going to be pro here very soon. And it came from gate drops. He made up a
Yeah.
lot of time with those gate drops. So I'm glad you're implementing it, and glad Max bought in, because it's not easy to buy into that too when you've already
Mhm.
been in that class. But I feel like he's that type of kid that listens and wants to do well, and it takes advice well, and just works hard and does it. So it's been great. I
Yeah. So
love that kid a lot, and I'm glad you've implemented this.
again, I want to do, when we started this podcast, obviously we want to give recognition to these families, and these kids, and what they're doing. But I don't want to stay so surface level, and if there is a spot where I can maybe tell a story, and I want to get a little bit deep on this before we end this show, is
Yep.
how many times do we look at kids and go, that's the next guy, right? He's got it. He's gonna do it. He won the 65 class. He's in the 85 class, and what we don't realize, there's so much life left, and there's so many outside things that you can't, like. We have to work with the parents, whether you're with KTM, whether I'm with here. It's not about the kid. It's about the whole package, and it's extremely. You can bet all you want, but Max. I'll just tell a little story. He's life happens, and you can be on your way and you can figure it out, and something out of your control happens, and his parents went through a divorce probably at the worst time for an amateur motocrosser's career. So having to navigate through that stuff. So every time you think it's a sure shot, oh well, if he doesn't get hurt, if he doesn't, man, there's so many things besides finances and relationships, and so much stuff can happen. So it's important to remember those things, and why we're doing this. And I do want to end off on this, is like, if anybody's thinking about, we talked about, can you do the 3 races? Applaud the family that can do these 3 races. It's awesome that you're there, but come up with a plan and a race schedule and a training schedule that is sustainable for your life, and that's not going to stress it, because the mental game, I'm learning with Max, is and we know it's important, but it's more important than So not finding, we got to hit the most races or we got to train the most, but find something that's sustainable for you, because if you wreck your marriage or your child's, your relationship with your child by yelling at them in the meantime, it's all for nothing. There's so many variables. So being fast is such a smaller part of the puzzle than anybody even knows.
Well put. I think that's why this show will be successful, because we are in absolute unison on so many things that are very important. And again, I think we're going to be able to, over time, find our differences and be able to really dig deeper in some of these topics. But I think on the big stuff, you and I have always been on the same page. That's why we've been able to get along, and that's why this show is going to be awesome. And I'm pumped, dude. This is episode 1 of Everything Amateur. Greg Albertson with Game Moto. I'm Daniel Blair with Supercross University. And I believe our next show will be covering the SMX Next Supercrosses. We can get through. They got Foxborough, I think, in about a week or week and a half. And after that one, we could probably do a review on the 4. We got a bunch of shows planned. We're going to cover the World Minis. We're going to cover pre-regionals, post-regionals, pre-Loretta, post-Loretta. We have a cool list of shows coming for you, but this is episode 1 covering the Spring Nationals. And if you've made it here to the end, thank you all for tuning in. Greg, great first show. I enjoyed talking to you. We talk all the time. We might as well record it.
Right. So,
Know what I'm
man, and
saying?
if you enjoy this going to the race, this is we're gonna kind of see how this takes off. So if you enjoy this going to the races, listen, and you want to see more, man, tell your friends, hit us up, let us know, because we could do that. We like Daniel said, we talk about this as much, and this will kind of be your guys' demand. Right now, he kind of laid out that structure,
Yep.
but this is what we're talking about every week. So we would love to bring you as much content as possible.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in. Episode 1, Greg. Nighty night.
All right, night.